This is the Committee on Law and Government. We have a quorum consisting of Councilman O, Council President Clark, and Councilwoman Blackwell, who is the Chair of the Education Committee and has been appointed today to the Committee on Law and Government. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title of the bill and resolution before us today, please?
Bill number 180098, an ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified electors of the City of Philadelphia of an amendment to the educational supplement to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter relating to the eligibility, selection, and removal of the members of the Board of Education, relating to the Board of Education's responsibility for the administration of the school district, creating a parent and community advisory council as approved by resolution of the City Council, fixing the date of a special election for such purpose, prescribing the form of ballot question to be voted on, and authorizing the appropriate officers to publish notice and to make arrangements for the special election. In Resolution 180112, resolution proposing an amendment to the educational supplement to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter relating to the eligibility, selection, and removal of the members of the Board of Education, relating to the Board of Education's responsibility for the administration of the school district, creating a parent and community advisory council, and providing for the submission of the amendment to the electors of Philadelphia.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, this bill and resolution, the ballot question, very similar to the one that we have previously approved back in December, with just a few changes just to make sure that it meets all legal requirements here. If there's any comments by the committee, if not, Ms. Marconi, why don't you call I think we have 3 people who wanted to speak.
Linda Rubin, Lisa Haver, and Novelette Jones.
Okay. All right, thank you. While they are approaching, I just wanted, for the record, we have a written statement from Jane Schlusser, Chief of Staff of the Mayor, in essence, repeating what I just said, which is this is a very similar to our previous bill and resolution, and the administration is in favor of that, of the bill and resolution today. Who would like to go first? Please identify yourself and proceed.
Excuse me. My name is Linda Rubin. I'm a member of APS, the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools. I taught for 3 years at Walton Elementary in North Philadelphia and was a school counselor for 38 years at D. Newland Fell Elementary in South Philadelphia. During my 41 years of service, in addition to my school duties, I served on school-wide discipline and safety committees formed by Mayor Street's transition team and CEO Phil Goldsmith. I worked with city and district personnel about improving attendance procedures, was an activist for children's behavioral health improvements, both with local agencies and courts throughout the decades. I wasn't alone. The school district had avenues for us to work more cohesively with and for our children and families. I believe in public education, not as a charity or a city or state burden, nor as a money-making machine for supposed nonprofits. Frankly, in the last 17 years, we've lost sight of our mission. As we emerge from a non-transparent and non-accountable SRC, I urge us all to pay close attention to getting it right this time, to provide a process that has some independence from politics and well-heeled donors who have a financial and political stake in who controls the Philadelphia School Board. To be honest, I and APS support a democratically elected school board accountable to the people, as are the mayor and city council, and had hoped for an interim system to transition us to democratic local control. In the interim, however, I can live with a mayor and council collaboration for school board approval. However, the board must be independent, and removal from the board requires some cause and procedure other than just politics. The current nominating process and panel makeup is insufficient, to say the least. Besides the closed-door policy, experienced public school educators who could contribute the frontline perspective as well as the management perspective were few. There was a time when our administrators came from the ranks who understood the culture of teaching inner-city students in Philadelphia, its stresses and its rewards. As for the selected nominees, those with school experience were weighted more heavily from charter and even private schools than public schools. Where were the parents from South, North, and Northeast Philadelphia? I attended yesterday's nominating panel meeting. There were several parents nominated from children who attend Penn Alexander School. No offense, but Penn Alexander hardly represents the typical student body and has the luxury of getting resources from Penn that neighborhood schools just don't get. What experience do these parents bring to the table? Where were the public school advocates for that matter? I understand the board is managerial, but successful public education has a heart and soul necessary to growing children, as well as a business model. School board applications should be made public. The public is entitled to know the educational philosophy of the applicants, any conflict of interest, and their reasons for wanting to serve. Frankly, I believe the public education system has been the cornerstone of our democracy and may be its best defender. To do that, however, it must be rooted in a fully democratic process. Thank you, and I include some links to some op-eds that were in the paper.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak? Please identify yourself and proceed.
Really? Good morning. My name is Novelette Jones. I am a parent and most recent activist within the past year. I am a proud product of Philadelphia Public Schools. I am also a mother of 3 children who attend school district and charter-run public schools. Thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to my testimony today. Today's students, sorry, it's kind of big, so I'm trying to move on. Today's students have only known the school district governed of the school district reform, a state-run body that was supposed to bring funding and equity back to the Philadelphia schools. Unfortunately, the promises made in 2001 never materialized, and an entire K through 12 cohort of Philadelphia's school children suffered as a result. Despite students, parents, and teachers' persistent advocacy for more resources and stronger schools, our efforts were slowed and frustrated because of ultimately nobody was liable for what was happening in the classrooms across the city. The SRC's appointment structure diffused that responsibility between state and city leadership and provided political cover for nearly 2 decades of instability, inadequate funding, and underperformance. Thankfully, the SRC is poised to dissolve in July. But this unfortunate chapter in our city's educational history will not end if we fail to replace the SRC with a governance structure that truly holds someone accountable for the new school board's effectiveness. Under the educational supplement of the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter, the accountability would rest with Mayor Kinney, who will appoint the new Board of Education members in March. Mayor Kinney recognizes that the success of our schools weigh highly on the future of our city and is willing to answer for both in order for local control to succeed. After 17 years of the SRC, I applaud an elected official who is asking to be held accountable by the public and promises to do what's in the best interest of our children. But for the mayor to be truly accountable, he must be responsible for maintaining an effective school board beyond the appointed process. We should not limit the mayor's authority to remove ineffective board members. Doing so would be to return our schools to a non-accountability, a governance structure, much like what we just finally are, moving away from. It is not enough for a mayor to appoint the board. If, for example, an appointee effectiveness as a board member were to wane because they took a new job or their spouse assumed a new role that creates a conflict of interest for the board member, change would be needed. The public must be able to pressure the mayor to replace that person. Why would we want to weaken our own leverage? If a mayor can simply blame bureaucracy for the status quo, then we will not have made any progress since the days of SRC. I believe responsibility for the board should rest solely with Mayor Kinney and future mayors of whom the voters of Philadelphia elect into office. In other cities, the mayor-appointed school boards studies links success to strong accountability. If we've learned anything from the SRC, is that shared accountability adds up to no accountability at all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Haver, before you speak, please let the record reflect Councilman Jones, member of the committee, is present. Is there anyone else here that wants to testify on this bill or resolution? Okay. Ms. Haver, you'll be the last witness. Please, identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Lisa Haver. I am a retired Philadelphia school teacher and education activist, co-founder of the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools. Good morning, Council President and council members. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to repeat what Linda said. We really believe that a strong public school system is the foundation of democracy. And if we're living in a democracy, and you as elected officials know how important democracy is, there has to be some kind of democratic process, not just for choosing the board, but for any possible removal of board members. It cannot be strictly, political whim. You probably know our organization attends all SRC meetings. Even policy committee meetings, which is one tomorrow, will be there. We attend all charter approval hearings, charter amendment hearings. We really keep a close eye on the SRC, and I think many of you receive our reports, ears on the SRC, eyes on the SRC. So we really do see why it's so important, as Ms. Jones said. We've lived through 17 years of very little accountability. And it's been a very difficult time for the children. And I think when you look at the 27 people who've been nominated, I think that reflects a very flawed process. And if you read the op-ed that I had in the paper and two of our other members had in the paper, what we're saying is, given the fact that we do not have an elected school board in a democratic society, there has to be some kind of checks and balances. You cannot just have one person rule. And when you look at the fact that, the nominating panel is chosen by the mayor, and those people choose people who are chosen by the mayor, at some point there has to be some kind of check. And the only check that we can see is that if somebody needs to be removed, it has to be a reason why that person is removed. It's really important. I mean, we were there. I was there with Ms. Rubin, and we saw this all go down, and it was kind of shocking. And I didn't recognize most of the names, and I thought, how do I not know most of these 27 people? I've, been a teacher. I've been an activist. I go to look, who are these people? So I can't comment on the diversity of, racial makeup or economic makeup. But I'm thinking, where are the people who are on the scene advocating here in City Council or advocating in the SRC? Where are those people? I don't know who these people are. I know a couple people. So I think that when we do this, we're reacting after 17 years of non-accountability. But we have a chance now to change things. And I don't know exactly what your plan is and what the chronology is, but I really would say, if there's time, to take a look at the makeup of the nominating panel. There's really not any educators. It doesn't allow for people who are part of the system, not even that many parents. So if there's a way now to look and see, can we, now that we have the chance, and charter changes don't come along too often, now that we have a chance, can we see how we can make this a more accountable process? We as the Alliance, communicated with the nominating panel. We said, these meetings cannot be closed to the public. It's a violation of the Sunshine Act. You cannot tell people they can't come. We did not win that battle, so there was no public input into the process. We had serious questions about whether or not that nominating panel was acting independently, and the fact that the assistant secretary of the panel is a member of the mayor's staff. I don't see how that's an independent board if somebody from the legislative staff of the mayor's office is serving as assistant secretary on a panel on what she actually does not serve. So if we have time, and I say this is the time to really look at, can we make sure this is an open process? Can we look at the way that the makeup of the nominating panel is constructed, do we say, you can't just say, oh, these are all in executive session, you can't come in, and then we end up with these names, and if I say, well, I have a problem with these names, where? You know, some people are saying, well, there's not enough charter people, there's too many charter people. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, do people believe in public education? And do people believe that all schools, including charter schools, have to be accountable? So if you have, you know, a failing public school, district school, what are you doing to make that a better school? What kind of resources is the district putting into that school? If you have a charter school that has academic problems, financial problems, organizational problems, what is the district doing to rectify that? I think people even who send their children to charter schools believe that there has to be accountability. We can't operate schools that are not functioning. So I think this is really an important time, and we shouldn't rush this, and we should really take the opportunity to say, what is the best way, in the absence of an elected school board, to make this process open to the people of the city? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Council President Clark, you want to say something? Just
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all so much for coming down this morning. We hear you, and believe me, there was a significant amount of debate among the members in terms of what this legislation would ultimately be. I must say the first version was a lot more aggressive in terms of quote-unquote checks and balances. All aspects, the nominating panel process, there was some suggestion that there should be public hearings on all of the nominees. There was questions with respect to the termination of a member's tenure on the board, about how we should move forward on that. But at the end of the day, when you talk about a process that involves legislators and the executive branch and the people, particularly those advocates, you have to work out something that probably most people don't like in its entirety. And then you probably think you hit the sweet spot. That's just the way I've seen. Because if we did everything one way, where you guys went here, hey, railing, yeah, great, awesome, awesome, there would probably be some members on this panel and within the council that don't necessarily like that, and some members in the administration I know would say, no, I don't necessarily like that. But when you have some concerns, and this is just my little mindset in terms of how I tend to do things, that everybody has a little issue with what you do, but most people agree, particularly as it relates to the concept, and most of the large issues, like having a more open, transparent process. If you remember originally, this thing was, mayor said, I'm doing this, thank you very much, have a nice day, right? And now you have a situation, in the earlier part that you talked about, the nominating process, the mayor does, the executive branch has flexibility on how they establish that process. This particular one was chosen this particular way, but that doesn't mean that there can't be some changes in that process as they move forward. Yeah. With respect to the nominees, you remember, and I'm telling you what you did for the public's purposes, there was no confirmation process in prior legislation.
Yeah.
There is that in there, and that's that check and balance that you talked about. Those individuals that are nominated must come, and they're going to sit right here, and I suspect that you all, people will be able to testify on those nominees, and those nominees will be asked questions by the members of council, and I'm sure you all going to give us some questions to ask them, and hopefully that process, one, I know it will be transparent, two, hopefully it will be of benefit to the process. Then with respect to the termination of a member from the committee, we've worked out language. We put early language out. There were some concerns by members of the administrations and some members of the council and the whole 9 yards, and we think we crafted a reasonable compromise as it relates to that. So while the process is not perfect, and I'm not saying that you suggested that it be, at the end of the day, when you have this kind of a government, you got to work things out. And I think that ultimately, as we move ahead, I think that people will be proud of what we do. Clearly, and I'm not, I promise the chairman, I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm going to shut up after this. Clearly, this is phase one, phase two. Okay, we got it. It's ours. what are we going to do with it? And that relates to making sure that the appropriate resources are there. That particularly relates to making sure that the school district functions in a way that meets the primary goal, which is educating young people. There are going to be some things that members of the school board may not necessarily like with respect to operations, because I know a number of us think that things can be done in a much more efficient manner. This whole issue, charters versus public and traditional schools, they're all public schools. And at the end of the day, the state legislature chose, and well, the governor, former governor, chose not to give us the appropriate reimbursement on charter schools. That's the cost driver here. We have to figure that out. How do we replace those resources? So there's a lot of work we got to do, but I just believe, and this is clearly my perspective, that we've put together what we think is a reasonable approach to moving ahead. Then we got to work on the bigger picture, because we really have to figure out a way to make this work, because all eyes are on us now.
Yeah.
All right. So that's just, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I ask a
Thank you.
question
Sure.
about something that you raised? Will there be hearings on this current group of nominees?
There'll be a hearing on the 9 that the mayor sends over.
Oh, no, that's not necessarily the case.
There
So,
was a 9 that he sent.
yeah, well, the acceleration of the selection process, in terms of getting the nominees on board, technically will probably happen before the charter passes, because you remember the confirmation process is not valid until it gets actually certified by the city commissioners, and that's going to be maybe 2-3 weeks. So we're looking at June before we're technically in a position to confirm. There is some discussion about, some discussion about a public process on the nominees, and we're trying to work that out, because we believe in transparency, and we're actually forced to do that based on our legislative body. We're still trying to figure out how to deal with that, but technically, legally, they're not required to have confirmation for this first set. But 2 years comes up quick. On the next or this mayor's inauguration, they will have to nominate an additional 9 people.
Okay, I mean, if there's
Well, when
anything
we-
that this body can do so that the people have something to say about who's going to be that first school
Yeah.
board, that would be a really good thing.
Yeah, well, I know one of my colleagues in particular was I'm not going to say who, right? But was looking at some possible process. But
Okay.
we took that in mind, that
Okay.
the timing is a little different than we
Yeah.
originally anticipated, but they wanted to have some transition time frame.
Okay.
So we're working on that.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for
Thank
your
you.
comments. If there's no one else here to testify,
Oh, she got, never mind.
if there's no one else here to testify on this bill or resolution, that concludes the hearing of the Committee on Law and Government. We will now go into our public meeting, and the chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell for an amendment on Bill number 180098.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the amendment to Bill number 180098 be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment to Bill number 180098 is approved. Councilwoman Blackwell on the amended bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Bill number 180098 as amended be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and also recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Bill number 180098 as amended is reported out of committee favorably with a rule suspension. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell on the amendment to resolution number 180112.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the amendment to resolution 180112 be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. Councilwoman Blackwell on the amended resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that resolution 180112 be reported out of committee as amended, and thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, resolution 180112 as amended is reported out as committee with a favorable recommendation. That concludes the business of the Committee on Law and Government today. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.